Okay, our first story today is about FDA drug facility inspections, mostly about foreign inspections here. About 40% of the FDA's drug inspections are in the European Union. But even at that, the FDA is not really able to keep up with the inspections of all foreign drug manufacturers. It's a daunting task. I mean, there's a lot of them, and the FDA just doesn't have enough manpower to get to all of them really on a timely basis. But one thing that could help speed things up and lower costs is FDA's Mutual Reliance Initiative, the MRI. The concept is pretty simple, writes Dara Corrigan, the U.S. Food and Drug Administration's Associate Commissioner for Global Regulatory Policy. In her article, The FDA Mutual Reliance Initiative, A New Path for Pharmaceutical Inspections in Europe and Beyond, Corrigan describes how the MRI works. European Union country inspectors inspect in their respective countries. The FDA inspects the manufacturing facilities in the United States, and then the EU and the FDA rely upon each other's inspection. I mean, that's really it in a nutshell. They trust each other's inspections, and so they don't have to do their own. Now, according to Corrigan, this would avoid duplication of effort. You wouldn't have an EU inspector from Europe going to a country and then the FDA coming in and inspecting the same company. You would have just one inspection. This would lower costs, and also more important, I think, is it would enable regulators to devote more resources to other parts of the world where there is greater risk. Because part of the problem right now is with all these inspections going on, a lot of them, the FDA has to go in and inspect, let's say, some company in the European Union, and it's a company that already has a good track record and so forth. I mean, if it had already been inspected by somebody from the EU, the FDA could trust that, and they could spend their time looking at like burgeoning drug facilities, drug manufacturers coming up in China or India and so forth, something that needs maybe a little bit more inspection, but they can't do that. Now, as part of the MRI, the FDA and the EU assembled teams to assess the risk and benefits of entering into this type of mutual recognition agreement. The FDA was invited to observe the EU's joint audit program, in which 2 EU nations audit the inspectorate or the regulatory authority of another member. So in other words, they look at how regulators do their jobs and how well they do it. The FDA first observed the audit of Sweden's inspectorate by auditors from the United Kingdom and Norway. Since then, the FDA has observed an additional 12 audits of drug inspectorates across the EU, with more observations planned through 2017. Now, this unprecedented access allows FDA observers, writes Corrigan, to gather firsthand knowledge of the laws that govern EU GMP, good manufacturing practice, drug inspections, and how inspectorates manage the drug inventory with their own respective borders. It also provides a unique opportunity to understand the regulatory framework in the EU. Now, keep in mind, what's going on here is the FDA and the EU want to get comfortable with each other. The FDA wants to have confidence that if they're going to accept an inspection that was done by an EU regulatory body, that they have confidence in how things are done there. And that's what all this is about. It's kind of a vetting process is the way I look at it. There's 28 member states, 27 after Britain leaves the EU, and so there can be a lot of differences that the FDA has to understand. So that's why this process is going on. So this all sounds really good, right? I mean, let's trust each other's agencies and not have multiple agencies inspecting the same drug manufacturer. It's going to save money not only for the regulatory agencies, fewer inspections, but also for the companies being inspected. There's going to be no duplication of effort and better use of resources. So let's do it, right? Why not? Well, we'll see. It's a good idea. It's still moving forward, but the MRI is one of the key components of the pharmaceutical sector covered in the Transatlantic Trade and Investment Partnership, or TTIP. If that doesn't sound familiar, it's one of those trade deals, right? And as we know, President-elect Trump is not a fan of a lot of these trade deals, including, let's say, the Trans-Pacific Partnership, the TPP. He is expected to not be a fan of the TTIP either. So some expect that the MRI could be stopped in its tracks. However, Corrigan says the MRI could take another path if the initiative progresses more quickly than the trade negotiating. So in other words, read between the lines here, if the MRI, the things that they're doing right now with the MRI to kind of vet the process, make sure the process works, the negotiations that are going on with it. If that progresses faster than negotiations of the TTIP, or even if the TTIP gets torpedoed, there may still be hope for the MRI. If not, then I think you can expect that the FDA will continue to struggle to keep up with foreign drug manufacturers, and basically we'll be where we are right now.